A while back, I made a video about a swamp setting in my D&D game. I want to expand on that place some more, so I've created 2 monsters that inhabit this area, and a little bit of lore to go along with them. Let's start with my personal favorite. The first monster is the lake snatcher. I'm basing this mostly off of the Ahuizotl from Aztec mythology, but I'm gonna incorporate some other elements to make it its own thing. So the Ahuizotl is a dog-like creature with spiky fur and a prehensile tail that it uses to grab people and drown them. It can also mimic the sounds of people to lure them close to the water to grab them. That's going to be the base of my creature, but I want to make some changes. This is an ambush predator, so I want this thing to be kind of like a jaguar or a tiger. Those two have an affinity for water, so it's going to roughly have a body similar to one of those. I haven't been able to find it, but I've seen videos of those kinds of big cats stealthily entering water while barely disturbing the surface. That's exactly what I want the lake snatcher to be able to do, which is why I'm giving it that body type and skill set. The next animal influence is the thylacine, or the Tasmanian tiger. They're beautiful animals, but unfortunately they're extinct. Thankfully though, we do have pictures and even video of them. The stripes on the back of the lake snatcher are directly influenced from the thylacine, and its head is partially inspired by that as well. I want the lake snatcher to have a longer head shape with a snout because when it lurks beneath the water, it kind of reminds me of an alligator, and since this is a swamp creature in a swamp, I like the aesthetic of that. The other influence for this creature's head shape is the Andrewsarchus. This thing is much more extinct than the thylacine, so I need to mention that the appearance of it is purely conjecture at this point. In fact, I'm basing my creature off of the outdated appearance of the Andrewsarchus, when it was more wolf-like. Paleontologists now think it looks a little more like some kind of rat hippo thing. Both are cool, but I'm going with the big wolf head for this. Let's talk about the most striking feature, the tail. I like how the original Ahuizotl has a hand on the end of its tail, but my version is going to have a poisonous barb that can paralyze its victims instead. And as you can probably see, it's ringed with black and white stripes. When I was looking at animals for inspiration, lemurs really stood out to me for some reason. Maybe it's because I like the idea of the ringed tail being a continuation of the stripes on its back. Or maybe it's because I just think it looks cool in general. However, I didn't want the lake snatcher's tail to be bushy, but rather more like a whip, so it's less cute and more imposing. I also like how lemurs have these dark patches around their eyes. It gives them a bit of an unsettling or sinister look, so I wanted to incorporate that as well. The last physical feature are the spikes on its back. Well, maybe spike isn't the best term for them. I think they would be closer to whiskers. On most animals, whiskers have a lot of functions. They can help the animal navigate by physically feeling their surroundings. They can sense things like air currents and temperature changes, to the extent that it helps them track prey or avoid other animals. They can even sense vibrations too. The way the lake snatcher utilizes these is by lurking just below the surface of the water so that its whiskers are sticking up into the air, I guess kind of like the periscope of a submarine. Like the Ahuizotl, the lake snatcher can perform a bit of mimicry to try to draw people or animals close to it. Once the prey gets close enough, the lake snatcher will lash out with its tail to paralyze it and then move in for the kill. While mostly for sensory detection, I like the idea of the whiskers looking kind of like reeds as a form of camouflage, since it spends a lot of its hunting time lurking in the water. The last thing I'll mention about this creature is its habitat. The lake snatcher usually inhabits the region around Kronar, the once great orc city that fell to a cataclysmic disaster. The ruins have been partially overtaken by the swamp, but some of the humans from the town of Skitter will sometimes scavenge here for old artifacts or magical relics. Normally, the main threat that the scavengers have to contend with are the spectral will-o'-the-wisps, which are actually the ghosts of the orcs that died in the great disaster that befell their city. But there are rumors of the lake snatcher lurking beneath the murky waters in the area. I doubt that many people have seen the creature, so most will just regard it as a legend or a folktale. When I was doing research for the last swamp video, I came across this thing called Bog Iron. I had never heard of it, but it's exactly what it sounds like. Iron that comes from a bog, or an otherwise swampy area. Now, I'm absolutely not an expert on this, but from what I understand, these deposits form by iron-bearing groundwater reaching a bog through things like springs, rivers, streams, any method of water being transported from one place to another. Once that iron-bearing water reaches the bog, those tiny bits of iron get oxidized, usually by a type of iron bacteria, but also sometimes from oxygen as well. And those bits of oxidized iron eventually clump up into chunks of ore, I think. Additionally, this ore is very porous, meaning it has a lot of holes in it, which means more surface area. This increased surface area allows the ore to absorb things more easily, like a sponge. The reason I'm mentioning all of that is because I want this next monster to be themed around absorbing and accumulating things, specifically an emotion, hatred. In the years after their city fell and was abandoned, the orcs that used to live there now live scattered across the swampy region, afraid to build another city that might anger the swamp and cause another catastrophe. They now live a more humble life and try to be more in harmony with nature. However, eventually humans and some other races in the minority settled in the swamp and founded the town of Skitter. Logging in this region became one of their primary exports, so the deforestation of the area increased as their population grew. It hasn't quite reached the point of being too much, but certain habitats are being disrupted, and some of the orcs are becoming disgusted with this expansionism. One of the orcs that has decided to act on this goes by the name of Bazrond. Usually, the orcs and the people of Skitter coexist peacefully. There might be some tension at times, but there hasn't been any large-scale conflict. Some of the orcs even trade with Skitter. But Bazrond remembers what happened to his ancestors, and he doesn't want another sweeping disaster in the swamp. Bazrond is a fairly powerful magic user, so he concocted a spell that would allow the swamp to defend itself from the deforestation. He went around to the boggy parts where iron forms, and infused them with not only magical energy, but his hatred for the humans as well. All of this hatred and magic was then channeled and absorbed into the chunks of iron ore, causing them to form into golems. The golems are made from the swampy materials around the ore: moss, peat, branches, bones, mud, and then at the center is the iron ore, which acts as the creature's brain and heart. Now, although these things are composed of organic and natural materials, bogs are usually full of decay and stagnation, so I want that to reflect in the design of the golems. They're not happy forest creatures with little birds whistling fun tunes on their shoulders. They're more like abominations full of rot and hatred, in limbo somewhere between life and death. I want them to be kind of slow and lumbering, but powerful. I was a little inspired by Regigigas from Pokemon, where it starts off slow, but eventually the creature reaches its full power. However, instead of needing time to become more dangerous, I like the idea of the golem becoming more powerful and frenzied as it takes damage and its core gets exposed, allowing all of the absorbed hatred to shine through. As for what they do, the main objective that they're magically programmed, I guess, with is to patrol the swamp and prevent the humans from logging. They attack humans on sight and are openly hostile to them, but if they come across any orcs, they leave them alone. They can't be reasoned or bargained with. They only seek to protect the swamp, kill humans, and destroy encroaching civilization. If they're defeated, most of their body withers away, but the iron core remains. I think it would be cool if that iron could be used to forge weapons that have some kind of magical decay or necrotic properties. But the trade-off is that the iron is dangerous and difficult to work with, as if it's radioactive. It would also probably take a very skilled blacksmith to shape it into something useful, especially since the iron corrupts and damages anyone who physically touches it. Alright, so that's all I've got for now. If you have any thoughts or ideas, leave a comment and let me know what you think.